So GPT 5.1 is here and it's really fast. In fact, I'm able to one-shot this landing page with all the animations and everything in one single prompt. And you can see here, this is the proof. Of course, I'm adding a bunch of context using Aura, but you can see this is a single prompt and I'm able to create amazing designs even without context. Amazing image to HTML. For example, this image here, and we have the ability to have much better styles, even with the most primitive prompts, such as creating a beautiful landing page. You can see it's so much better. The styling, there's no purple here, and you're able to create a beautiful card just like that. Then we get into the image to HTML, which is one of my favorite ways to sort of take something and then recreate it. So you can see this is a design from Apple, fairly common UI, but using that, you can recreate the text and the layout and ask the prompt and change and give you an intent. So here you can see it's very accurate. Now, the most important thing that you need to know is that this is way faster than it used to be. Normally, before, this would take 1 minute to analyze the image and then generate. Now, it's basically instant, and that is really exciting. So today, what we're going to try is all of these different ways. So generate a simple prompt. So we're going to play around with the animations, the references, and the really cool edits. The new Mockups tool, as you can see here, you're going to be able to put your mockup in front of many types of background, which is really cool. So we're going to play with all of that and different ways to elevate your design skill. Even though you're using AI, I think it's just a tool. And at the end of the day, just like many technologies in our lives, AI allows us to make a lot more powerful edits to the design so that we can focus on the last 5 and 10%. So let's start with the most basic way to prompt, which is to say that you're going to create a landing page for a SaaS product. And it's really good to say the name and what it does and the style that you want it. So whether it's dark mode, light mode, and so on. If you want more information, you can always go to the prompt builder. This is going to give you a sense of what kind of layout it can be and what kind of style that you can use for your design and the colors and so on and so forth. But otherwise, this should be good enough. And you're gonna see it's really fast. This is live, by the way, and it didn't wait at all. Before, it used to take 1 minute to think for GPT-5, and now 5.1 is just so much faster. You can see it's so good. You can see here, it has the name. Of course, it's not very good with generating logos and stuff like that, but you can see the layout. It looks so professional and better than 90% of what's on the web right now. And you can just start editing it. But here, keep in mind that I haven't added any single prompts and context and styles that far more than what is the basic name and stuff like that. So the fact that it's able to do this really fast, I think that's so impressive. Next, we're gonna go to our favorite inspiration websites, whether you're going to My Mind or Dribble or any of your favorite websites, Lapa Ninja and so on. You can just, take a screenshot. So we're gonna take a look at a new product that was just announced, and I thought it was a really interesting style. So we're gonna take a screenshot of this website here, but we're gonna focus on the landing page. This is how I like to start because I don't like to throw AI a ton of stuff like images and stuff. When it focuses, it does its best job, but also, unless you're giving it a lot of code and references, it's not going to be doing as well. So we're going to do this. And I'm just going to take that screenshot I have this already prepared. I like to use this one. I want to change the text. I want to just focus on the hero section and make sure to mention text names and numbers. And this is the best way to sort of like make sure that whatever you're taking inspiration from, and by the way, this, whether you're doing it manual or you're doing it through AI, it's important that the inspiration that you're taking, that you're making it your own, and then you're like changing a lot of things, you're adapting it to your website. In this case, we're just doing a demo and we're gonna see how accurate it's gonna be. All right, so what is interesting about this rendering is that it's not exactly following the light mode, but it does have some, and also because I'm saying to change stuff. So it has like the coloring of the buttons and the elements that are floating here. But most importantly, what is important to notice here, first of all, how well is the design, like the shadows, the gradients, it looks really professional. It's not purple. And also, it's trying to be more creative, but still not using really over the top, blurs and gradients. And here you can see this button looks pretty good. It looks very professional. The text, the typography, and the elements. Sure, it's not perfect, just like Midjourney. When it reaches a certain maturity, it's going to take, it's going to allow you to really steer the wheel in a way that it's far more creative and far more tasteful. And that's really the important thing about the new era, is that you're relying on your taste more than on your execution ability. You need to know what is good design and what is not good design. So, okay, so I don't like this, I can change this. Oh, you keep steering it. And the same in the Midjourney, you want to generate as many as possible, and then out of hundreds or dozens, you're going to pick the best one based on your taste. So with a few edits, you can go to assets, for example, and then you can select any of these images that are really speak to you. All right, so with just a few edits, I was able to change the image using Aura. I changed the icons. I'm using the new icon set using Solar Bold Duotone, and this is really cool. I can just edit a few things. It looks much better, and from here, I can create new sections. And so I can select this one, and I can just add more sections. All right, so with just a few more prompts and kind of like steering it with the coloring and adding references to the components that I want into the page, I mean, look at this. This is incredible. This is so professional looking. This is what I would expect from a well-funded startup, for example. Now, of course, you should spend more time fixing the copy, fixing the problems that you might see. For example, the border here, it might need a little bit more padding. So those are things that over time you're gonna get better. And this is amazing. At the end, what I love to do is just to add a beautiful background to it. And voila, you can see we have so many backgrounds that we can add. If you want that extra oomph to your design, you can see it's just really professional and really cool. It's definitely gonna get the eyes to your product. And there we go. We have, in just a few prompts, and with the help of a screenshot, we focus on a hero. And from that, I could have edited more. I could play with the fonts here. If I want like a Geist font or a bricolage or whatever that may be. It's really fast, and that's kind of like what I wanted to do with Aura. So this is a full landing page, and now we're ready to get into references from the get-go. So here, what I love to do is do the same thing, create a landing page for a product. called, I don't know, Aura, whatever, you know, I always use the same name, but, and then you want to reference, this is your starting point, and you want to use a component, for example, you want to say, okay, I want this button, or I want this, you know, so I'm going to search for button, and let's say I want this button here, and I want the hero, and I'm going to select a hero design that I like. So for example, this one, and so this one, I'm going to mention that it's the main button. And finally, I can add, you know, I want more sections, and search for section. And this is where I can, you know, these are the components that I used earlier, but I can just press shift, and then I can select more, like this one and this one. And just keep in mind that you want to look at a maximum of 100,000 characters, otherwise it would be too expensive for us. And then we also want a certain style, which can be really useful. For example, you want to go to code snippet, you might want to use liquid glass, or you want to use, you know, progress blur top, and you want to animate. So let's go with this and press enter. And there we go. This is absolutely incredible. You can see that it's using the main button here. Sure, I would have hope here, but also keeping in mind that when you you refer to a design, maybe it already has a button, it can be confused unless you're a lot more prescriptive in your prompt. So for example, you should say, okay, I want this button to replace this blue button here. The same with, you know, because I don't spend a ton of time describing all of those things, you know, for example, some of these colors might not fit together, or the background image and so on, but it's really, really impressive, right? Like it's using both. It's not, you know, it requires a little bit more fine tuning, but this is really cool. And all that's left also is to change the font. This is another thing that I could have mentioned, is I want all the font to be the same one as the hero. And it's really important to understand references, because on a product like Aura, it reads your entire code base. And every time, so for example, this is the entire code. This is a lot of code, by the way, and it's very costly for us to generate this 1,700 lines of code. Anytime that you reference something within the code, for example, you can say, oh, the first section, or the blue button, or you can say the nav bar. Well, it needs to read the entire page, the entire code base, in order to, you know, to do what you're asking it to do. Which is why I highly recommend to use some of these features that comes with Aura. You go to, you know, for example, the fonts, you know, instead of asking AI to do it for you, you take the steering wheel. You know, if you go from autopilot, and then you just, you know, fix what you need to fix in, you know, an efficient way possible. So for example, I can just change all the fonts to Geist. I can remove whatever is imported, and now I have something far more consistent that I would have to spend money on the prompt, right? But in this case, I did everything myself. The same with the font weight. You know, AI likes to have these bold fonts, less so with 5.1, but in a lot of AI, so for example, Claude, it's going to do that. And the same with the font tightness, and especially for the headings, you want it tighter to make it a little bit a better use of space. And as I mentioned before, here, the button, I can just select it and go to prompt specifically this, and it's going to be just far better. So I can say I want the button from the nav bar to be main instead of the blue one. So this is going to edit only this part. It's not going to regenerate the entire page again, which is 1,700 lines of code. And there we go. So we have this edit here, and all of this is in the history. So every time that you make an edit, even if you select an edit, even if you add, you know, using a prompt, you can always reference anytime. So even if, let's say, you don't like any of these buttons at all. So for example, the second button, replace the second button with, and then you reference another button. So here I'm going to go with a more neutral button, like something that is not as you know, as in your face. So for example, this one, and you know, I want it pill shape like this. Awesome. Now we have something that is more secondary as a button. It even applied the purple hue instead, which is kind of nice because maybe it fits better the page. And what's next? Again, you want to get into the logo. For example, here you want to remove the content. So you can always go to the code of each element. And for example, here I just want the div, and I'm going to go back to edit. I'm going to set the size. This is all using Tailwind. I like to refer Aura as sort of like a Tailwind editor. And, you know, it's really powerful because you don't need to go into the code and you go to the styling and all that stuff. And, you know, you can use pixel values, and then you can go to image. So here I'm going to go to image, and I'm going to search for a logo. And, you know, I can just go with this one, and then I can, you know, ask change to Aura, and then I'm going to generate it. And then finally you apply the image, and voila. So this is super powerful, and every time that we make a manual edit, you can save, you can, you know, edit. I highly recommend that you play with some of these, you know, coloring and replacing, similar to Figma, you replace color by color. For example, if you don't like the green, you can always change that, all instances of green, to be blue instead. You know, this is totally something that is feasible. Now, of course, for some elements that are a bit more complex that, you know, it is very hard to detect, such as an animated like this, it could be a lot harder to do the replacing of colors. But that being said, it's able to do this quite nicely. And then finally, another thing that I love to do is to be able to just change the avatars and the image. So we have a lot of images that you can use. For example, for portrait, you can just quickly select new portraits that are perhaps a little bit more unique to your brand. And the same with some of these images, you just want to change them one by one. So for example, I can search for mockup, and then this one, I'm gonna add some of these product images that I love. And the same with this background, I can also select it directly. I don't need to use, this is more like a list to make it easier for everyone. But, you know, you can always do both. You can select it yourself, and the same with the avatars. I'm gonna select a portrait, and, you know, it's really fast. And then finally, if you want to do it manually, you can always select the element, and then you can replace the background. You can look for texture, for example, which is really cool. So I can select something perhaps like this or like this, you know, just until you're really satisfied with your design. So this is pretty good. And we have a very nice page that we customize. Of course, we can do a lot more. And what is cool is that we're using templates. So everything is adapted really nicely using the prompt and using the descriptions that we're asking. But we're using GPT-5, and it's doing a really, really good job at all of the details. And it did it in a record time compared to before. And now I want to show you the canvas feature, which I think is really useful. So in terms of presentation, once you have this, you want to post it on social media, you want a YouTube cover, you want, you know, a dribble cover or whatnot. So I try to make it super easy. You can just switch to this mode, which is the tablet or the phone mode, and then you can test your device you can test the design against different resolution. Now, what is interesting here is that this is an infinite canvas. So this is new. I can just move it around and I can just drag this for the size, the same with the height, and I can just change to presets. So this is really cool. And also we have a bunch of presets that you can use. So for example, if you want light mode, you want dark mode, you can imagine you can also zoom in and you can sort of take a screenshot from your Mac and then show it to the world in a nice presentation. You can also set it, so I'm gonna go to preview because you can both do in design and in preview mode. So for the image to work, you need to set it to preview because we want to make it sure that preview is more for, you know, showing the full finished product versus design mode is where you can edit things. And here I can have the dark preset or the light preset, but I also have the ability to switch to desktop, and I can zoom out, and I'm going to have this desktop preset, which is really, really popular on social media, where you're showing a version on the left side, which is the hero, and then you want to scroll down and then you want to show the rest of the pages. So for example, you want people to see that there are more content to your design. So this is a pretty cool thing to do. And of course, you can change the image to the background using any of the backgrounds that we have, and you can sort of like customize the blur of that. So for example, you can, you know, decide to not have blur. You can decide to have different backgrounds. So abstract, for example, is very popular, and you know, a lot of styles that you can use for your design here. And another thing we can do is we can play with more presets, but we can also set it in 3D. So this is really cool, and you can see I can just move these elements, you know, these canvases, these preset previews, and I can also set to multiple devices. So like this, you know, and then I can move this in the front, I can move this in the back, and I can set to different presets such as the iPhone. You know, I can move this on top of the image, and if it doesn't fit, you can always resize this a little bit like this, which is very easy. And now we have something that fits really nicely. And yeah, we just have so many of these presets that you can use. And of course, with these presets, you can customize the mockup that is in the background. You can upload your own image, which is really cool as well. So you can also use this one, or, you know, any of the other presets that is available. But of course, you know, if you want the correct sort of angle in terms of perspective, for those who don't have a ton of experience with perspective transforms, you can do this as well. Now, keeping in mind that you can just play with the perspective transform. So for example, here I can move the 3D angle, the 3D rotate, right? X and Y and Z, and then I can also change the perspective just the way that I want. And again, you know, you play around with this, you can change the hue, right, of your background, and it's just so much fun. You can also reset it, of course. It's just so much fun. And lastly, another thing that I love is to have an overlay. So an overlay, for example, you're gonna search for overlay. So you can add like a drop shadow on top of it. This is not gonna be visible on the dark mode background, but if you set it to a light mode background, you can see these really subtle shadows on top of it. So these are kind of moody shadows that really adds and elevate the presentation that you have in front of you. And so, yeah, you can customize the ring, you know, how big do you want it to be, and the corner radius of your preview here, which is really cool. So you can play around with different of these shadows. You can see some of them looks more like bamboo or like the window shadows that you put. And of course, you can change the background color as well. So for example, if you want something a little bit more bluish, you can go with a gray, the slate or the gray tone, which is really cool. And again, we have something that looks so much more presentable as a mockup. And you can just add more mockups if you wish. You can just add, an iPhone, and you can just add as many as you want, and it's just really fun. One final thing that you can do that I love is to be able to go to your previous chat, like the one that we created, and like the many one that we created actually. So this is the one that we just did, and let's go to another one of my designs. And I can just present sort of like, oh, these are the designs that I made this month, or have a nice mosaic of all of that stuff. So I can just change the corner radius of all of them. I can also make it very, 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 very subtle. And voila, so this is so cool. I can zoom in and just present it however I wish. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and this is what makes it so unique here, is that this is all HTML, which means that it's all animated, it's all live. You can even go to a URL such as aura.build, and it's going to load that page, which is really cool. And you can really present it, especially really useful. We've been using in a team for the cover of the design that we present. So once we finish templates, and we have many of them here, we do use that mockup tool to present it and to show the full website, the full landing page. So that's it. We managed to create really beautiful designs in just a few prompts using really powerful references. Sometimes we can start from a foundation level, which means that it can be a wireframe, it can be like a screenshot, it can be like a napkin drawing, it can be anything you wish. And then GPT 5.1 is just going to transform that into HTML and make that into a design. And then you can just edit everything. You can add a background and, just have fun with it. Just to give you some examples, this is really cool. This is from a screenshot. You can see here, it's an AI generated, design, and it kind of captured the colors and it kind of tried to turn that into a landing page. And there we go, like we have something that is very creative, but at least it keeps the colors. And there's just a ton of things you can play with. For example, I took one of my old design. It didn't respect necessarily the light mode of the design, but it still created something that I would be able to use it because I'm quite happy with the direction of the design, the layout, and even the button here. You can see it's a really nice button that someone who has more experience with design is able to take this and turn it into gold. And I think that's kind of like how I think about AI right now is, yes, there's a lot of AI slops out there, but at the same time, it is up to you to use your taste, your experience, and your know-how to sort of steer this in the right direction and fix what it needs to be fixed, and change the font if you need to really, really quickly. You can set it to light, you can set tighter, you can turn it from light to dark mode quite easily. And if it doesn't feel right, you go to the next one, or you prompt and you fix it. So just like a human, AI is not meant to be perfect. It's not gonna one-shot everything perfectly. It shouldn't. And a tool should never give you a one-shot thing, right? Like it's like downloading a template on Figma, right? You never want and expect the template to be perfection, have everything you need, and that's it. Usually you need to spend some time editing in the content, going to the CMS, changing the colors, changing the logo, changing this and that. And that's kind of like how I think about it. And hopefully, with time, AI is going to get better. It's going to, do it faster so that you can focus on the things that matters the most, which is what is it that makes this website stand out? Whether it's adding a new animation to the background, whether it's generating the perfect images for the hero and the avatars and, or just make it dynamic and all that stuff. And then you take all of this code and then you export it to HTML. And then, we don't lock you in with Aura. If you don't want to use our system, that's fine. You can export to Figma, you can download it, you can copy the code and then just go to Lovable, V0, you can go to Cursor and then continue from there. But what we want the most with Aura is just to be able to do something that you love, creating a UI that you love, that you put a lot of thought into, and not just creating something that looks like AI slop, right? Because if you just start with a prompt and then you go directly into the code and the engineering, sometimes you just skip the whole design and it looks like a product made by, just anyone. And, it doesn't stand out. It doesn't have a personality. And so we want something that is far more unique, and that has your personality and that has your concept. And then when you're ready, you add the functionalities to it. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I see you in the next one.